So in the last video, I showed you guys a common chess trap in the French opening. What I want to show you in this video is the important stuff, which is doing it in a real life game over the board, or in this case, online. So my opponent here is, we're playing a blitz game. As you can see, it's 3 minutes, but my opponent plays the French. So I go in, I play the opening correctly. This is just the standard opening French position. And I castle. And now my opponent plays queen b6. Now, it's important to know traps, obviously, so you can capitalize on your opponent's mistakes, but also it stops you from wasting moves. You don't want to make moves unnecessarily in chess because every move counts. It's a turn-based game. We want to make every move count. We don't want to waste time. So making a move like I'm going to defend my pawn like this would certainly be a waste of time in this position and wouldn't make much sense. The same with rook b1. Yeah, it does guard the pawn. It's okay. It's not detrimental to your position, but what's the point? So if you look at my last video, and if you didn't, I suggest you look at my previous video I just put out last week about the French trap. Here is the trap. We have to know that the queen cannot take here. So because I know the queen cannot take on b2, I simply ignore the threat and I continue my development and I develop my queen to d2. Is it the best move in the position? No, but it's a move and I'm developing my pieces and I'm ignoring, more importantly, a threat that doesn't exist. My opponent here, to my surprise, and this is why some players, even very advanced players, don't know all the traps in chess or all the positions that, are out there. There's a lot. That's why it's important that we memorize all these positions or as much as we can and memorize these traps so we can see things as quick as possible over the chessboard, because it's one thing to know it, but you also want to really know your stuff and know it so you can, because there's a lot going on in chess over the board in a game. We want to be able to know stuff as quickly as possible so we're not wasting precious time on the clock and precious brain power thinking about all this stuff. So my opponent incorrectly plays queen b2. Now, if you looked at my last video, if you subscribe to my channel, which if you haven't, hit that subscribe button. But anyway, I would appreciate it. Thank you. But anyway, my opponent does play queen b2, which is a blunder. Now, some players might be thinking like something like a3, and with the idea of, now if they play a random move, you trap the queen. However, that's way too slow. If I played a3, my opponent would see that, just come back, and then by the time you hit this move, they're safely out of harm's way, and they're up a pawn. So no, after queen takes b2, you play rook b1. The queen has one square to go to. That's a3. And now we hit them with knight b5, attacking the queen and threatening check, winning the rook. The only way to stop both threats is to play queen a5. Now, obviously, if we play knight c7, that would be a mistake. So we have to play accurately. We can't, just screw everything up right there. So no problem. I just simply trade, like I went over in my last video, and then knight c7 check, and this is what happened. Now, I'm also going to show you how to follow this up, because this is a very strong player, and a lot of times you might hit your trap, or you might hit, you might be more prepared than your opponent, but then they still outgrind you in the game, and they create counterplay and beat you. So I'm just going to show you guys how I finish this game off, because there are a couple of tricks here, and I just want to show you how I did it in the easiest way possible, how to shut down your opponent when you're winning, how to convert an advantage into a one game. Okay, so my opponent wants to stop my knight from coming out. The only problem is I have too much firepower on the queen side, so I'm going to be able to get my knight out. So first, I just take this pawn. Now, what does that do? That gives me an escape square that I didn't have before, because this pawn was guarding the escape square. So now I have this escape square. Now I have a knight, a bishop, and a rook hitting the square, so that should be fine. My opponent comes back here attacking my bishop, thinking that if I bring my knight back here, they can take my bishop probably. However, I still play knight b6. Now my opponent realized that it didn't matter if they took my bishop. I'll show you why. If they take my bishop, I can do two things here. I could take their bishop, and when they take back, I'm hitting the rook, I'm hitting the knight. If they do something like this, then I pin the knight and I win it. There's nothing they can do. If they come here to guard it, I just simply take in this position. Oops, I did not do that. Sorry. If this was the case here, I would simply play, maybe it's not so simple. I would simply play, what would I simply play here? probably just a4. Yeah, a4 and just push the knight out, and there's nothing my opponent can do here. So that would be that. If they decided to, let's say, guard the knight like that, still at this point I have this passed pawn, which is very, very tough to deal with. So I would just push the pawn up, and there's really no way to stop this pawn from coming up here, especially when the rook is disconnected from this side of the board, and the king is going to have trouble getting the rook connected. It would have to take moves, and then these pieces will have to get out of the way. In the meantime, I'm coming up the board and getting a queen. If I come back, if he takes, I also don't have to take the bishop. I can do things much less easier. A more simple combination will be to take this, and then after he takes, I take the pawn and I hit the knight and bishop, and I'm going to get material back. Okay, so anyway, after I come back here, my opponent realized, okay, this doesn't really work anyway, taking the bishop. So my opponent took with the bishop. I took, and then they took this pawn instead, which is a better route to go for them. So I trade down, and now I just attack the knight. After the knight moves, I throw in a check. The queen comes into a pin. The king comes into a pin, so I pin it, save my bishop, stop any type of traps in the future, like trapping my bishop, no problem. But what I really want to show you here is after this move, a4, my opponent steps out of the pin, and when your opponent steps out of your pin, now it's your time where you have to either make a decision to take or not to take. Because when they're in the pin, you don't have to make that decision right away usually, because they're pinned, they can't move anyway. You can always hold that move for a later day or a later move. But now I have to decide, do I take the knight? Now, I have the bishop pair, so a lot of you are saying probably don't take the knight, preserve the bishop pair, and you're not wrong, but you are wrong. So it's definitely a strategic positive to have the bishop pair, but chess is not about just memorizing all the principles. It's about deciding what's most important out of everything. And here, what's most important out of everything would be to get this passed pawn. Okay? So in that case, I did trade, and after my opponent took back, now I have a passed pawn. Before I had this, if I pushed my pawn up, it would run into this pawn, and we would have a pawn trade. Now I just simply push my pawn, and my opponent tries to desperately blockade it, but I play rook b6, and after this, I push again, and my opponent resigns because there's no way to stop the pawn from advancing unless you just give away more material. Anyway, hopefully you found that video helpful, and if you did, also check out the previous video before, and also check out this video. I'll catch you guys next time. Go play some chess.